As Sith, we break our own chains, choose our own path, overcome all that stands in our way. These wretches wear the name servant with pride. They happily enslave themselves to a madman. That the Sith ever tolerated them is repugnant. That we still contend with their delusions after all these years.
The Emperor can bend the will of almost anyone.
I know that all too well. Trust me, they chose this path for themselves.
Korriban, the original homeworld of the Sith species, is a cold world of crying winds and dry, rocky fissures. Hundreds of canyons, their cliff faces marked with grim statues, and honeycombed with winding tomb passages, make up the planet's infamous Valley of the Dark Lords. The few creatures that live on Korriban, including airborne Shiraks, dragon-scaled Sis, and Sith hounds, Tukata, are said to derive sustenance directly from the Force's dark side. Some spacers even claim that Sith alchemy can animate corpses, and that Korriban zombies sometimes polish off unlucky freighter crews. Korriban has a recorded history dating back at least to 27,700 BBY. In that era, the Sith ruler, Addus, fought off a conquering horde of Rakata, then hijacked Rakatan hyperspace technology to spread his Sith civilization from Korriban to neighboring worlds, including Zeost. After Addus' death, Korriban became a ceremonial tomb world. A civil war initiated by Dathka Grosh in 7000 BBY left most Korriban cities devastated, and after the arrival of Dark Jedi into Sith space a century later, Korriban became an unpopulated repository for increasingly elaborate mausoleums. The burials ceased in 5000 BBY following the Great Hyperspace War, and Korriban remained empty for a millennium until Exar Kun's disciples established a Sith Academy there. During the Jedi Civil War, Korriban returned to prominence as a hub of Darth Revan's revived Sith Empire. Even the Zerka Corporation built its headquarters there, in the settlement of Dreshdeh. But the Sith Civil War left Korriban a graveyard once more. In subsequent millennia, Korriban has been an occasional dark side training facility, but it is most often remembered as a ghost-haunted world of whispering evil and Sith secrets. It has a diameter of 16,890 kilometers. It has 28 hours in its day, and it takes 780 days for it to orbit the sun Horusset. Proud and violent, the Sith species hailed from Korriban. The species had more Force-sensitive individuals than most other sentient species in the galaxy. In fact, it was so high the entire species was considered Force-sensitive. They had a connection to the dark side of the Force, sustaining themselves with it, and in turn sustaining the dark side. The hue of their skin ran the gamut of any shade of red. They had a predatory profile and possessed sharp features on their bodies, such as bone spurs at places like their elbows. Most Sith had cheek tendrils hanging from their cheekbones. Horns, pointed teeth, and yellow glowing eyes were all common to the species. Some individuals also had a prominent long bony chin. The Sith favored left-handedness, so their signature weapon, the Lan Varrock, was made to favor the left hand. With the arrival of the Dark Jedi in 6900 BBY, the Sith species began to interbreed, leading to hybridization. Because of this, only a small number of pure Sith were around by 5000 BBY. Some Sith of the time, like Ludo Kresh and Marka Ragnos, were half-breeds, while Naga Sadow was mostly descended from the Dark Jedi exiles. Almost constantly in a state of war, their culture and civilization was still quite sophisticated. They saw these actions as simply the way to exist, not as cruel or barbaric. They even practiced sentient sacrifice to their gods, and due to their warring ways, the population had decreased. One practice that we would find disgusting is the consumption of what they call blood soup. Generally, it was the blood of conquered foes that the Sith would imbibe to honor their deaths. The Sith, like several other species throughout the galaxy, had a caste system. Their society was hierarchical. Sometimes each caste was considered a subspecies. Every caste possessed red skin, pointed teeth, and cheek tendrils. After interbreeding with Dark Jedi, the original Sith were called Red Sith. The Zugaruk caste, the engineers who built and maintained various aspects of Sith technology like ships, tombs, and even droids. The Massassi caste. These burly Sith were the caste of warriors, due to their size and strength. Not too bright, but capable of training to carry out the complexities of battle. They even possessed their own language. The Kisai caste, the priests of the Sith, cold and calculating, ruthless and highly intelligent, they studied the mysteries of the dark side and Sith sorcery and alchemy. The slave caste. Not really a caste, but they were necessary to Sith culture, as they were the labor force. They could be any species, even Sith, usually referred to as Grothu. They were used as sacrifices to the gods and were buried with their Sith Lord when he died. Long before the Jedi exiles arrived, the Sith civilization evolved on Korriban. They were a divided people living in what they called tribal circles, led by a sorcerer. War and peace were not distinguishable for the Sith. Their ways go back to at least 100,000 BBY, but most likely even farther. In this period, the Sith kept records via scrolls, tomes, and tablets, usually containing dark knowledge. Several of these writings were imbued with the madness of those who wrote it, causing the unprepared, who read their ancient words, to be driven to insanity. They were able to drive off the invading Killiks in 30,000 BBY by their fell techniques of the dark side of the Force. 6,500 years earlier, a Tho-Yor appeared on Korriban to take some Sith to Tython, where the Jedi were forming. Civil war continued on Korriban until one day, millennia later, one Sith, called Addis, united all under his rule. He was hailed as special, as he had charcoal-colored skin and was quite adept at sorcery, even forging his own battle axe with said sorcery. This was around 28,000 BBY. He became a sort of god king to the Sith, and he was eventually bestowed the title of Sithari, the perfect being. King Addis ruled for 3 centuries when the Rakatans arrived. The Rakata tried to trick the Sith, but Addis led his people to repel the invaders, and even taking their advanced ships and technology, spread his Sith empire to neighboring worlds. However, King Addis was forced to give his life to free his people. With the king dead, Korriban was plunged into civil war once again. The Kisai moved the capital of the empire from Korriban to Ziost and rebuilt, giving a rise in prosperity, even increasing the empire to more planets like Jaguda and Malachor V. A small group of priests were branded as heretics and exiled to Tund. They would eventually go on to become the Sorcerers of Tund. At this time, Korriban was mostly abandoned, only to be a ceremonial tomb world, and over centuries and millennia, they built many grand tombs for their Sith lords. The empire continued to prosper and expand, and due to difficulties in navigating the Stygian caldera, where Korriban was, they were isolated from the rest of the galaxy. After the 100 Years' darkness, the Dark Jedi exiles were sent to Korriban. They conquered the Sith and became lords of them. The leader of these exiles was Ajunta Pall, the first of the non-Sith people to earn the title Dark Lord of the Sith. They solidified their new empire, and in a failed attempt to go attack the Republic, a party of Sith were lost, resulting in the Jedi learning of the exiles' survival. The exiles mixed their blood with the Sith and over millennia made a more cunning and ruthless species. The Empire grew rapidly, controlling dozens of worlds. The leadership kept the small folk in check, never letting them gain a position to revolt. The Golden Age of the Sith began when Marka Ragnos became the Dark Lord of the Sith. He ruled for a century of ruthless cunning and ironclad will, but he eventually died. Ludo Kresh and Naga Sadao warred to determine who would succeed Ragnos. Though both fought, Sadao won and organized the Sith to invade the Republic. Thus began the Great Hyperspace War. Sadao conquered the Koros system and Republic planets Forost, Coruscant, Caecilius, Metalos, Basilisk, and Shaken. But Sadao was outnumbered and eventually had to retreat back to Korriban. Over his home planet, Sadao and Kresh battled, with Sadao finally taking out Kresh. But the Republic had followed, which promptly pummeled Sadao's harried fleet. The Sith caused a binary star to go supernova, which eliminated the Republic fleet. However, more Republic vessels came and drove the Sith to near extinction. Some Sith fled to Viyun, others to Thule, some went to Kesh, and others still went to Ambria. And Sadao, he found a world to make his own, Yavin 4. Another group fled deep in unknown space, led by a Sith Emperor. Sadao put himself in suspended animation, and years later was awakened by Dark Jedi Frida Nad, who after becoming Sadao's apprentice and learning all he could, killed Sadao. Exar Kun, who was a fallen Jedi, became a Dark Lord of the Sith on Yavin 4. He used his newly acquired Massassi Sith warriors to build temples. Kun experimented with his Massassi, like Sadao before him. He went to take out some rivals, and fought Ulic Keldroma, but Marka Ragnos' spirit was drawn to them, and he declared Kun the Dark Lord of the Sith, with Keldroma as his apprentice. Kun attacked the Jedi and acquired artifacts that he desired, but the Jedi attacked Yavin 4, killing some Massassi. He attempted a ritual to free his spirit from his body to live forever, but his spirit was ultimately trapped in his temple. Some Massassi lived on. The Sith Emperor and his cohorts continued to build up and wait for their moment of vengeance. This empire grew, eventually recovering lost worlds like Korriban. Finally, after centuries of building, sowing discourse, and gaining power, the new Sith Empire attacked the Republic. They battled for 28 years, until they formed a peace, but it was only a ruse. In reality, the Sith used the peace talks on Alderaan as a distraction to sack the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and held the Republic capital hostage, forcing terms to their liking for the Treaty of Coruscant. Sith purebloods were becoming less frequent, but still held privilege in the Empire. Over the millennia, however, the Sith species faded and eventually became extinct. That is the Sith species and their homeworld of Korriban. Let me know what you thought of the Sith, as well as who is your favorite Sith. And we're talking species here, not your favorite Darth. Feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And until next time, thanks for watching.